It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it.
Hey everybody, this is Atticus the TheDeathMetaller, and welcome to a very longly overdue episode of the TheDeathMetaller Cinemas. Here in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the atrocity that is Season 8 of Game of Thrones. And I know a lot of you people are going to say to me, Atticus the TheDeathMetaller, you are so late to the party talking about Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Well, excuse me for being super fucking late onto the topic of Game of Thrones. And I have a very valid excuse onto why I didn't make an episode onto Season 8 of Game of Thrones, with the very following. So yeah, that's kind of why I was a little bit late on talking about it, because the TheDeathMetaller Cinemas, every episode that I have done, it takes a lot of fucking work, so don't blame me for waiting a long time to do it. So without further ado, I got all the time in the world just to make this episode of the TheDeathMetaller Cinemas, and it's been a while since. So without further ado, let us begin the episode right now. Game of Thrones was a fantasy drama created by D&D, abbreviation for David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Based on the Song of Ice and Fire book series by George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones is set in the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. The 7 kingdoms being the North, the Riverlands, the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Westerlands, the Reach, and Dorne. The show chronicles the violent dynastic struggles amongst the realm's noble families for one thing and one thing only, the Iron Throne, while other families, like the Starks for instance, fight for independence from it. Meanwhile, in the nearby continent of Essos, in exile from the near-extinct dynasty, the Targaryens builds up allies and forces to reclaim her rightful place amongst the Iron Throne. All of this going on while a sinister evil up in the lands of Always Winter take their time in gathering an army that would swallow the living whole. The show has ran a pretty solid half-decade from 2011 to its end in 2019. The show proved to gain a very popular following, much like that of people who are into such things like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. I mean, look at me. I'm wearing my House Stark shirt right here and my Stark ring, as well as I have a pop doll of Jon Snow and a House Bolton banner up above my room. Not to mention, I got all 6 seasons of Game of Thrones on DVD. Game of Thrones really succeeded in character development, effects, wardrobe, plots, lore, culture, and amongst other things. But it all came crashing down on the 3rd episode of Season 8. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Atticus the TheDeathMetaller, you already talked about this on a previous video not too long ago. Well yeah, I know I did. But I left out some parts of that episode because I was more focused on how social justice warriors were getting triggered over the fact that the Dothraki and Unsullied bore the brunt of the casualties while the White people fled to Winterfell. But I also want to talk more about this particular episode. Not only was this, in my opinion, the death of Game of Thrones, but it was also the death of one of the most popular characters of the show, Jon Snow. But before I talk about Jon Snow, I'll go more in depth onto why a lot of people were not satisfied with that episode. I know that I brought up that The Long Night scored a 75% at Rotten Tomatoes, and could be attributed to a lot of things. Poor lighting, even poor battle strategies, and even Arya Stark killing the Night King than Jon Snow. But before I get into why a lot of people are pissed about the climax of that episode, I will talk more in depth on why the director Miguel Sapochnik chose to direct all of this in complete darkness. Now I get it. I really do get it. Miguel decided to show the majority of the battle in complete darkness because we wanted to see the perspective of what the defending army had to experience fighting the army of the dead in complete darkness. And in many regards, it has worked due to the sheer alcoholic anxiety that I went through watching it with my neighbors. but to a lot of people, we could not see a lot of action throughout the episode. Now, most people said that they set the brightness of their TVs pretty high and that there was a ton of stuff that shocked them. The whole argument is a double-edged sword in a way, because if Miguel decided not to show the long night in complete darkness, it would be inaccurate. But if he shot it in the darkness, you have people like me complaining about it. Almost in this regard, you will fail regardless, and that is unfortunate in my opinion. But I explained on my previous video that the battle strategy was completely piss poor. I don't need to go further, I've already talked about it. I really want to talk about the elephant in the room. Arya Stark instead of Jon Snow killing the Night King. Again, I was not expecting it to happen, and was happy that this whole nightmare was over to those whom have survived. But again, after sobering up, I shared the same grievances and anger that all my friends had. Arya Stark completely destroyed the prophecy of Azor Ahai. Now, before I get into the prophecy, let me make things explicitly clear here. I am not some sexist, misogynistic incel complaining about the whole climax. As someone whom has watched the show and invested in the history and lore of A Song of Ice and Fire, it pretty much ticked me off. And besides, Arya Stark is not some Mary Sue. Arya Stark has been through shit and is a more developed character than Carol Danvers. I explained it perfectly on my Captain Marvel rant. But yeah, Azor Ahai, a prophecy that was brought forth by Melisandre. I'm sorry. I just get a little bit carried away over Carice Van Houten, who played a very amazing performance by the Red Priestess herself. Like, oh my god, she's so hot. But now, on to the prophecy. The prophecy states, "There will come a day after a long summer when the stars bleed and the cold breath of darkness falls heavy on the world. In this dread hour, a warrior shall draw from the fire a burning sword. And that sword shall be Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. And he who clasps it shall be Azor Ahai come again, and a darkness shall flee before him." Now, we can all agree that Stannis Baratheon was spoon-fed this prophecy by Melisandre, but let's be frank, he was not the right fit. But it was heavily applied that Azor Ahai was either Daenerys Targaryen or Jon Snow, and I'll indeed say with confidence that Jon Snow was the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai. Like, think about it here, guys. Jon Snow wields the legendary blade Longclaw, a badass Valyrian steel sword held on by Jer Mormont for years. And to me, that is the sword Lightbringer of the prophecy. He is also confirmed to be the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, which was proved that Rhaegar did not rape Lyanna, but loved her. It's also confirmed in the books that the two had a thing. And the most important thing is that his entire development throughout the show was his battle against the White Walkers. He knew that the imminent threat of the Long Night was coming soon, and the guy been through a lot of shit and sacrifices. And seeing that Arya Stark took the killing blow instead of Jon completely killed his character. His purpose is now long gone, and all we get for the next 3 episodes is him faking with his dick onto Daenerys and nothing else at the finale, which makes that climactic moment pointless and poor. Now, with that, a lot of people like The World of Wolf, I can agree with his opinion that there would have been a Witch King Aowen style battle between the Night King and Arya. That would have been a lot better than her killing off the Night King. Yeah, sure, there were fellow White Walkers with the Night King, but I would have loved it a lot more if she battled a couple White Walkers with the Night King, killing off a couple before being overwhelmed, and right when the Night King is about to kill her, Jon Snow comes in at the end and kills the Night King once and for all. And I know most of you people are rolling your eyes, but it would give some time for Jon to move over to deliver the killing blow rather than yelling at Viserion. Like, what the fuck, bro? And before any of you guys bring out the theories that he was yelling at Viserion just so that Arya can make the final killing blow, no, I don't want to fucking hear it. It's fucking stupid. Showtime. thinking, Atticus the DeathMetaller, only Count Dankula can do absolute mad lads. And you'd be correct. But this is going to be a really piss poor bootleg version of Absolute Mad Lads, where I'll be talking about the character development of our favorite dragon girl, Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen has been a fan favorite to a lot of people. And no, I'm not calling her Dany or her really long ass titles. I'm just calling her Daenerys. But a lot of people have been really shocked to see her sudden character change in this final season. But the problem is, to a lot of people, is that she has always had that madness brewing inside her. It's just a lot of people were putting her in check, keeping the madness intact. I'm talking about people like Benniston Selmy, Jorah Mormont, Missandei, etc. Characters that have become strong friends and advisors for her at the very beginning, especially Jorah. Losing all of those people who have kept her in check are all gone in this season, and you've got yourself a mad queen. Now most of you people are going to say this to me, Atticus the DeathMetaller, what do you mean madness? She didn't do any atrocities before season 8. Yes, you fucking did. Remember how she crucified all the slave masters of Meereen? That was pretty extreme right there. But those were slave masters, Atticus the DeathMetaller. They deserved it. Yeah, well, that atrocity amongst many other things she did were catalysts of her madness, her tyranny coming out. It's like that Futurama episode where Bender says this line.
I say the whole world must learn of our peaceful ways. By force.
That's pretty much Daenerys. Daenerys was eventually going to snap in the finale. It was inevitable, but I will indeed criticize was on how rushed it was. Very rushed. Not giving us a bit more time and development till Daenerys snaps. I remembered as well reading an article that Emilia Clarke was inspired by speeches of Adolf Hitler while making her epic speech at the finale to her Dothraki and Unsullied. After listening to her speech, it made a lot more sense she probably got the inspiration from Leon Trotsky. Think about it here, people. She wants to free the slaves around the world. Trotsky won a global communist revolution where the workers of the world unite. Fucking Trotsky. I also really wanted to slap the shit out of the writers on her decision in moving all of the forces after surviving the long night down over to King's Landing. Yeah, really smart move, Daenerys. Fuck the consequences. Let's just move all of our battered and bruised soldiers of what we have and march them down to King's Landing where they have no fucking chance against the Golden fucking Company. And I also want to say this. The Golden fucking Company, the most god-tier mercenary guild of Essos, gets completely fucked by Drogon. Useless plot point. Like, at least give me a decent battle where the Golden Company is wrecking the coalition of Northerners and Daenerys' forces. But nah, it's all we get is Oh, I also forgot about the Clegane Bowl during the entire shit show Daenerys is pulling off in King's Landing. I was so pumped to see the clash between my man Sandor against his brother Gregor, but holy shit, it was mediocre, just like this season. So, the best way I can put this, the finale came like this. Jon Snow finally stops listening to his dick and shanks Daenerys. In response, Drogon melts the ever-so-coveted Iron Throne and then fucks off. Grey Worm then imprisons him before setting off out of Westeros. Instead of saying, the coast is clear for Jon, everyone decides, nah, let's just tell Jon to fuck off over to the Night's Watch, which I'm pretty sure Jon wanted that at the end. The North finally becomes an independent kingdom led by Sansa, while Bran Stark becomes the new king of Westeros. What the fuck? Why? And to top all things off, Tyrion decides to turn the now 6 kingdoms into a democracy where the powerful lords decide on who's to be the next king. I could go on and on and on why this plan is flawed, but Alternate History Hub made an excellent video on why this decision is retarded. Tyrion should know better. He has been neck deep in shit over Westerosi politics. You would think that it would be a terrible decision. Fucking hell! Charles Dance, who played Tywin Lannister, thought that was a terrible decision of the finale as well. The guy who played Tywin Lannister, who was the greatest Hand of the King, said that this decision was retarded. You done fucked up. Point is, that decision alone is stupid. I can say the only good thing about the finale was that Jon Snow finally comes back to Ghost after telling him to fuck off at episode 4. Which brings us to There are so many inconsistencies off of this season, it makes my head hurt. Hurt so much, I want to jump off of a fucking cliff. Like, for instance, Arya Stark loses her virginity by slam dunking Gendry Rivers. I know, I said Storm on the last video, I fucked up. And right after the long night battle, she decides, yeah, you'll make a woman happy, but it's not gonna be me. The fuck, bitch? Another one is that almost made me bring on my inner Kyle was how Jaime finally looked like he was done with his toxic relationship with Cersei by doing the deed with Brienne.
Go me blue! Slam that pussy into the afterlife! Woo!
And after fucking her, decides to fuck off and go back to Cersei. You finally did it to a woman whom has been through hell with you, made some actual chemistry throughout the show, and you just dispose her ass because you just can't let go over your toxic ass relationship with your bitch ass sister. You, Jaime, are a humongous fucking douche. Oh, and don't get me fucking started on Jon Snow listening more to his dick than looking past all the red fucking flags on how mental Daenerys is. He looked at all those red flags like they were checkpoints, as well as completely just fucking off to King's Landing without even giving a good boy pet to Ghost. I still don't know how he survived the long night. I could go on for fucking days. I could also bitch about on how all the thoughts used that one quote Cersei used in episode 1.
You want a whore, buy one. You want a queen, earn her.
But then proceeds to throw that quote out of the window and let Euron bang her brains out. This entire season made all the characters that we've seen go through tons of character development almost become unrecognizable with the final season. Oh, you knew that this was coming. What, you think I was gonna spare the whole shit surrounding the cup? Yep, that shit actually happened at episode 4, the last of the Starks at the beginning of the episode where you could clearly see next to Daenerys a goddamn Starbucks cup at the fine cut of the episode. And it is just laughable. You would think that a critically acclaimed show would think once or twice to get the cup out of the shot. But nah, there were millions of chances to get that cup out of the set, but they left the shot on the fine fucking cut. Now most of you in the comments are gonna say shit like, well, Stanley Kubrick fucked up on the intro of The Shining by having a shadow of the helicopter on the fine cut. Also, Peter Jackson had a car going around while shooting the Lord of the Rings. It happens. Shit happens. But in Game of Thrones, not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 fucking times. The second time, and where it looked like Jaime grew his masturbating hands on the scene where him and Cersei died from the rubble, as well as a fucking water bottle being held in the council after Daenerys dies. It just really shows to people like myself that the production behind the set do not give a flop. And look, I'm a guy that loves memes. I really do. But when you decide to embrace your fuck-ups over the show and just pass it on as a fucking joke, it just shows us that you do not care about the final craft of a show you spent half a decade on. Look, I know I'm acting all serious here and shit, but it just needs to be said. I get it, there were some fuck-ups on the set with Peter Jackson and Kubrick, but those were fuck-ups that none of us would really notice. But to the final season, it really shows the rest of us that the production, which had a million other ways to fix those mistakes, really did not give a fuck over their craft. With the huge backlash and criticism of the final season, I think it is warranted, and most of the reactions are pretty damn pathetic. I mean, D&D are no longer attending Comic-Con panels after the train wreck of a final season. There is still talk going around on rebooting the finale, in which Sophie Turner has explained that it is disrespectful to the crew and the writers and the filmmakers who have worked tirelessly over 10 years and for 11 months shooting the last season. And to which I respond, no. Like, I get it. It's a lot of work to be part of an amazing show like Game of Thrones, but it is far more disrespectful to the fan base to bring out a final season like this and claim that it is the climactic ending to a great series. Nicolaj Coaster-Waldo says that if you hated the ending, if you love the ending, that's great. just don't call people names, in which I agree to an extent. I do not blame the actors, I just blame D&D and the writers for the shitty season. But I can agree that rebooting the series is going to waste a shit ton of money, but the damage has already been done. I also find it so hilarious that there are people that blame Brexit for this shitty final season, because somehow when Brexit won the vote in 2016, it was going to jeopardize the production of the entire show. Because God fucking forbid that the British decide to leave the EU, and it's still going on with all of the tallying of the votes all over again until you get the right vote. It's like, is this democracy? But I think one of the worst meltdowns over the backlash is Kit Harington's response over the backlash, telling the so-called haters to go fuck themselves, which I find is a very, very, very inappropriate way to respond over to the season's backlash. While, yes, some people are huge dicks and will say very mean and hateful shit to validate themselves on how shitty the final season was. But to people like myself and the majority of us who are just criticizing on how horrible that season was, it's not that good to go over to your fans that are criticizing the show. But I will indeed say that I felt bad for Kit when he was going into rehab due to the absolute stress he had to deal with over the huge backlash, as well as him closing the chapter of a very exciting moment of his life, playing as Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. Another update while doing my research on this video is that Kit in another interview has admitted that the final season was in fact disappointing, sharing the same grievances as us filthy casuals. Game of Thrones Season 8 has become a massive disappointment for me. Sure, granted, everything with the CGI, the wardrobe, the cinematography are flawless with this season, except the long night. Don't get me wrong, those were the strengths that really showed justice to the show as it has shown us the past 7 seasons. But while it gained in that, it lacked in script writing, character development, inconsistencies, rushed pacing, and everything under the sun that really screwed this season over. We should have seen it coming when it was announced that the finale was 6 episodes long and it would give us this shit. But people like me were moths to a flame and brought into it. The 8th season of Game of Thrones gets a 3 out of 10 for this review. And now that I have brought out my final 2 cents onto this season, there is one thing left to do. Look at the flowers. Just look at the flowers. Look at the flowers. You know what? I can't do it. I really can't do it. I know it's a bit of a shock, but please people, hear me out. I am not that kind of guy who is that extremely petty to just shut out Game of Thrones, all just because of a really shitty final season. Ever since I decided to watch Game of Thrones in 2013, I was really hooked. The show had an amazing cast, amazing plot, amazing lore, as well as amazing character development. This show has made my heart stop, my blood pumping, tear up, feel cold, and always root for the characters that have had the worst, just shit all over them. Characters like Tyrion, Jon Snow, Arya, and Daenerys before she went loco. I also grew to really respect and admire the other characters like Tywin, Sansa, Jorah, Sandor, Tormund, Theon, and Sam. And also really hate the guts out of characters like Joffrey, Peter, and Ramsay Bolton. But let's be frank here, Ramsay was the best villain ever. But also, to respect the actors who played those evil characters. Game of Thrones has really played a huge part in my young adult life. Like on how Star Wars was when I was a young child, wanting to be a Jedi Knight, wanting to restore balance in the galaxy. Like Lord of the Rings when I was a teen, wanting to be a dwarf and be in my own fellowship of friends to go on quests. And with Game of Thrones has inspired me to form my own house, my own sigil, my own motto, and try to survive the Game of Thrones, where you either live or die. In many ways, the final season has become shockingly very important. Now please, hear me the fuck out. Yes, this season has become very important. Not because it sucked, but it has shown the world what not to do when you decide to end a great show like that of Game of Thrones. From the words of The Word of Wolf, bad sloppy writing can inspire great and flawless writing. And I really do agree with that statement. With really shitty shows and movies like The Last Jedi, 13 Reasons Why, American Horror Story Roanoke, Lady in the Water, The Last Airbender, and the final season of Game of Thrones, you get really great movies and great TV shows like Scream, A Clockwork Orange, Pan's Labyrinth, Split, The Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Dirt, Dark, and Haunting at Hill House. The bad writing of the final season of Game of Thrones might inspire you people to write an amazing script, like that of the whole script of Haunting at Hill House, or even better works. Yes, I did not like the final season of Game of Thrones. I really hated it. But it's not going to stop me from loving the past 7 seasons of a show that played a huge role in my young adult life, and for many more years to come. And who knows, if a reboot of the final season may or may not happen, as well as the anticipation of the prequel season of Game of Thrones, which I am very excited to check out, it may happen. All I know is for certain is that the future is highly unknown. So, what'd you guys think about Season 8 of Game of Thrones? Did you like it or did you dislike it? Leave it down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for waiting very patiently for this episode of the Deathmetaller Cinemas, and I hope to really push on and continue more onto these videos later in 2019 as well as the upcoming year. So there's that. So without further ado, ladies and gents, I am Atticus the Deathmetaller. Hope you like this video. Subscribe to my channel. Links are down in the description below. Keep it metal and have an excellent and blessed day, y'all.